found? Is he loyal to America or is he loyal to Abu Nazir? The whole 3 seasons is designed to answer that question. Now, what I'm going to propose is, I think that's a very American question, because the Israeli series, which has the same producer and it's meant to be the same story, asks a very different question. Does anyone know what question, for those that have seen Hatufim, is the central question of Hatufim? And the whole 2 seasons try to address this. Anyone want to guess? It's not that question, but it's the same story. Yeah. Yeah. Good. So I would say one more thing. It's about rehabilitation of who, though?
Identity.
It's not about the soldiers. It's about
Their families?
It's about their families. Okay, so the emphasis in the Israeli show is totally about how does a family cope with the return of captured soldiers. Just want to go back to the first slide. Have a look at the pictures. Here, the picture is the CIA agent and the soldiers that come home. Here, the soldiers that come home are irrelevant. The main characters are the wives and the girlfriends. Okay, so the question is, why are the 2 shows that are ostensibly the same story asking such different questions? That's what I want to explore this session. So I want to start off with the fact that this is not just hypothetical. A few months ago there was an American soldier that was traded for 5 Afghani Taliban soldiers, and the headline on the day he came back, his name was Bo Bergdahl, was "Trader or Wanderer." And so they're already questioning, the day the soldiers released, has the Taliban released him for any reason to try and attack America, or was he released, in good faith? So this is a psychology that's somewhat common to how some people view returned soldiers. So the question is, why is there a difference? I want to share a few of my theories, and then I want to ask you if you think that I'm right or if I'm wrong. So
we can all go home now.
Yeah. So I want to start off with the Israeli army. As you can see, in the Israeli army, it's a people's army. So everyone is meant to serve in the army, and the war is not on the other side of the world. The war is very, very local to you. Compare that to the Marines. This is an ad to recruit for the Marines. What does it say here? Honouring the community we proudly defend. And it says at the bottom here, the few, the proud. So to be a Marine, what do you need to be?
An elite.
An elite. It's not for everyone. It's only for a certain kind of person, and it's only for someone that's few and proud. Whereas Tzahal is meant to be a people's army. So one difference is that the character of the person serving in the Israeli army to the American army is very different. There's also another difference which I argue has to do with trauma. There's obviously a lot of times when I open the news in the morning and I read what's happening in Israel and I'm sad. And I'm sure this month probably even more so. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. But there's certain things in the news that you see that are much sadder than other things. And to me, this might be different for the people in this room, but to me, one of the saddest days of news that I read for Israel was this day. Does anyone know what's happening here?
Yeah.
Regev
and Goldwasser.
Good, Regev and Goldwasser. So we had made this negotiation with Hezbollah, hoping this was a campaign that went on for years. I remember his wife also came to Melbourne and I met her. She spoke at King David. I was teaching there at times. A very moving story, and there was this sense of they have to come home and they must be alive. And when they came home and they were dead, it was, to me, it felt much sadder than days where there'd been a pigur and 20 people had been killed. And I was thinking, why is it so sad? Why is this day? I don't know if anyone else felt that. Why was this day sadder than days where much greater tragedies has happened in Israel? Does anyone know why that was such a sad day? Yeah.
The hope.
Okay, good. So one, that we built up our hopes that they were coming home alive. There's something even more than that. It broke a rule. It broke a rule of Israeli society, which is what?
They swap alive.
Okay, good. So we all knew their names, we knew their family stories. They weren't just strangers that we never met, but it broke a really cardinal rule, which is what?
We don't leave anyone behind.
We go to war, and we know that some wars we're going to win and some wars we're going to lose. But a mother, when she sends her child to war, she doesn't say, don't come home until you've beat Hamas. What does she say to her son?
Come home safely.
Come home safely. And this, to me, it broke that rule of come home safely. And to me, that's the trauma that I think that Hatufim is dealing with, and I'll explain why in a minute. Compare that to America, where I feel, and Homeland definitely resonates with this theory, that the main trauma that America is dealing with is not this, but what? What's the
Homeland terrorism.
Yeah. So the main trauma is this. Okay, if you look at American foreign policy since this event, their main motivator is not, there isn't a sense of, oh, we can't have any more soldiers dying. The main trauma is in America is, how do we prevent this from happening again? So when you've got very different traumas, when you put that into drama, you're going to have very different stories. What is the aim of America's war on terrorism? Mark, can you read this quote for me?
Our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated.
Okay, so in America, there's an Abu Nazir, there's a bad guy, and when we get the bad guy, we're all going to be happy. We're all going to celebrate. This is the celebrations, I don't know if you remember when Osama bin Laden was killed. Throughout America, in front of the White House, there was this great joy, you know, ding dong, the witch is dead, we've got Osama bin Laden. What happens when Israel kills a Hamas terrorist? Nothing. Okay, no one says, we've killed the head of Hamas and now we have no more. You know, no one even thinks to celebrate about it because it's so ridiculous a notion that that this is going to end the war. So again, there's this notion in America that if only we can stop the bad guy, we'll win. But in Israel, there's a sense of the war's ongoing.
One bad guy.
Yeah, the war's not about one bad guy. It's against an ideology and a movement that, however we try, we're not able to defeat for various reasons.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Isn't there also the idea that in Judaism that we don't really gloat over killing our enemies? I mean, there's all kinds of holidays and you know, various things that we do to
Yeah, look, probably culturally, some people I know when this happened felt quite uncomfortable that, not that Osama bin Laden was a good guy, but why is there such massive celebrations? Others saw it as a sense of catharsis as well, as a sense of a release after the trauma that bin Laden caused so many Americans that, you know, we needed this release. So after the Second Lebanon War, which many Israelis saw it as a failure given to the high number of casualties, there was an inquiry into why this war happened. After the Second Lebanon War resulted in 44 Israeli deaths and 119 IDF soldiers, and it was a war that wasn't meant to last as long as it did, and it was fought very badly, and there was Homeland copped a lot of criticism for the way he handled that war. But this was the report afterwards. And it said the following. Ricky, can you read for me?
Since the 1978 Italian operation, Israel has conducted its low-intensity conflicts in post-heroic fashion. Post-heroic warfare is characteristic of non-existential wars fought by Western democracies. It has two main rules. A, avoid casualties to your own troops, and B, avoid killing enemy civilians. Such warfare has enabled Israel to combine operational effectiveness and moral standards in combat with enemies fighting in heroic fashion, ready to sacrifice their own fighters and determined to kill as many enemy civilians as possible. After a long period during which Israel has conducted post-heroic warfare quite successfully against the Palestinians and with partial success against Hezbollah, the recent war has revealed its limitations.
Okay, so what this is saying is that the problem is that Israel's not fighting like America anymore. We're not fighting a war where we're trying to kill the bad guy and hoping that if we kill the bad guy it's over. We're fighting now what this report says is a post-heroic war where the aim of the war is not to win, but it's to come home safely. So the aim of the war is to reduce as many casualties as possible on your side, and also to reduce the casualties on the other side as well. Why do you want to reduce the casualties on the other side?
Just galvanizing.
Yeah, because you know there's the PR issue there, and also obviously the ethical issue. And also on your side, you know that if Chas v'Shalom in this Gaza war there had been 2,000 Israeli soldiers dead, it's very unlikely that the nation would have supported that war, because we don't have a stomach for wars that have very, very high casualty rates. People can accept a small amount of casualties if they feel that you know, it's for a good reason, but large amount of casualties are not going to have the support of the Israeli public. We're not going to get involved in another Vietnam or something like that. That's not the intention of people, because we're not fighting to win anymore. We're fighting a post-heroic war, and what that means is that we're not actually going to win. So again, the Winograd report said, this is a criticism again, the the IDF had put troop safety over operational needs. So as in, had we been more daring and more willing to risk our lives and put ground troops on the ground earlier, perhaps we would have won, but we didn't do that, and that's why we lost the war. This is, and the Winograd report explicitly said, I'm quoting, you can see it in Hebrew there as well from the report, the IDF operated during the war with the fear of casualties amongst its troops, providing a key factor in its decisions and considerations. Now, the question I want to ask you, is that a weakness of Israel or is that a strength? The fact that we're fighting a war, we want to fight a war without any soldiers dying, or as least as possible, is that a weakness? Or is it, what do you think?
It's not weakness and it's not a strength. It's just a necessity. It's a fact. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, David.
To me, it's clearly both
Yeah.
weakness and strength. I mean, from an ethical point of view, it's certainly, we all want our sons to come home safe. It's necessary because, as you said,
Yeah.
you have to keep morale high and support for the war high, and high casualties would erode support. On the other hand, when you're fighting a war, there are certain objectives that you have in the war, and if you're not willing to risk the lives of the soldiers, you will not achieve the military objectives.
Good. Yeah, Mark.
And I think another factor could be placed upon it, and you've skipped across over the civilian part of which was the first part of what you said earlier.
Yeah.
That theoretically, I think in this recent campaign, Israel could have come out with 0 casualties had it not been so careful to avoid civilian deaths. I mean, if they took a more, think about America and Iraq or America and Afghanistan approach, just bomb from the sky and don't put people into hand-to-hand combat scenarios, you have very few deaths.
Yeah, and again, I think that probably the ground troops were sent in to deal with the tunnels, which is a sense of, we haven't won the war if we don't deal with the tunnels, but on the other hand, when the civilian toll gets too high, most people don't want to fight anymore. Yeah, Ricky.
I'm still working on this out in my head. There's so much information that we've got past. I went to a lecture with anyone else, Yossi Klein Halevi, and he was saying that like, for instance, 73 was an existential threat like it is now. So when you have existential threats, you've got the support of the Israeli population. So my question to you about this war, which was second, Israel saw it, or the Israeli population saw it not as an existential threat.
No.
So my question is it because it didn't have the support of Israel that therefore that they felt they had to be more careful in saving lives?
Look, if you look at Netanyahu's, I read a lot of his press releases, and he says in most statements, the aim of this war is not peace. He never says peace. Never says the removal of Hamas. Never says the end of terror. What does he say the aim of the war is?
To achieve security
He
for
says
Israel.
prolonged period of quiet. He uses that in all of his press releases. So think about it. We're fighting a war where we're not even saying we want to win. We're fighting a war saying, I know there's going to be another war in 3 or 4 years. My intention is not to win it. My intention is a prolonged period of quiet. And sorry?
It's a clean out.
Yeah, it's mowing the lawn is the expression that they use. But the question is here, what does this do to your society? Again, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but what does this do to your society? It does a number of things. The first is that it means that there's a lot of soldiers that come back from war, men and women, who are traumatized for various reasons. Since the creation of Israel, there are 1,500 prisoners of wars that have returned from Israel. Like a lot of them were in the Bashevi, in the captivity for a very short period of time, often in 48 and 73 for a couple of months. But there's actually a forum of them, and it's a closed forum on Facebook, but I asked to join it, so I've been reading it for the last few years, and it's fascinating to hear, they're mostly men, what they talk about, how they narrate each war through their lens as POWs. And when Gidi Ruff made this series, his thinking was as follows. Sorry, I don't know your name. Yeah, are you happy to read for me?
We are constantly fighting to bring our boys back home in Israel. We go out to the streets for it. We campaign for it. The government and the people pay a very high price for it. But then, when they do come home, nobody cares to hear about them anymore. The show is about what happens to them the day after they come back.
Okay. Good, thanks. And so what he's saying is, there's another story here. You know, when Gilad Shalit was in captivity, I know my shul, and I'm sure all of your shuls, if you go to shuls, we said Tehillim for him, and we prayed, and we had an empty chair at the table. and now no one talks about him anymore. I'll just explain what I mean by that, is that we don't say Tehillim for his well-being anymore. We don't talk about his welfare because now we think, he's at home and it's all fine. But in a way, he's still in captivity in a different way. He's still the traumas of what he experienced, and I don't know those of you that saw him in Melbourne. I know he spoke at Scopes. You could see he's a broken man. You could see that he's not functioning like a typical 20-year-old Israeli would be, or 25-year-old Israeli would be functioning. And so what this show is about really is not the war itself, but the day after the war. And it's so easy to forget what happens the day after the war. But perhaps if you start looking at what happens the day after war, you'll approach the war in a different way. So with that in mind, I want to go back to Hatufim now and show you how they do this. So in Hatufim there are 3 characters. There's Nimrod. These are 3 soldiers who return, whose wife Talia is considered, the good wife. She remains faithful for 17 years. She goes to a protest every week to try and bring Nimrod home. Then there's Uri, and his wife Mirit is sort of portrayed as a more negative character because she didn't remain faithful. She got remarried to Uri's brother. There's a scene about that I'll show you shortly. And the 3rd soldier is Amiel, which is here. And Amiel returns in a coffin, and for the entire 1st season he only appears as a ghost. So I'm not going to deal with him. I'm just going to deal now with Nimrod and Uri. And I'm first going to show you Nimrod's story, and then again I want to ask you what the question that they're asking here. It's a very provocative question, so just be aware of that. And the scene that I'm showing you is after Nimrod has come home for 17 years, he meets his 2 children who were born, they're maybe 18 or 19, so they were born shortly after, shortly before he was taken captive. And this is the first breakfast he's ever having with his children, where they're adults really, but look at the dynamics of what it's like to have breakfast the day after captivity is over. Again, just think of what question does Gidi Raf want us to ask here? His son was born after, sorry, and his daughter he did meet, yes.
אתה נעים עוד כאן?
כן, היינו פה כל הלילה.
מחכים שזה משהו דרמטי יקרה. שהוא רצח את כולנו ויתאבד או משהו.
איפה באות לך השטויות האלה לראש?
מה, באמת, אמא, לא חשבת על זה? ישן טוב לידו הלילה אחרי התנהגות שלו אתמול במסיבה? אנחנו לא יודעים עליו כלום, אנחנו לא יודעים מה הוא עבר שם, מה הוא ראה.
בטוח שאם זה היה מסוכן, לא היו נותנים לו לישון כאן הלילה.
אולי תפסיקו עם השטויות כבר. איך אותך אומרת שזה שטויות כשאת עומדת מעל הקבר של חצב, אחרי שהוא דקר אותו 36 פעם?
אמרתי.
די. לא שאני אומרת זה שבתור אמא אחראית, לא כדאי לך להכניס את הסכינים בבית בינתיים.
בוקר טוב.
בוקר טוב.
בוקר טוב. פעם את יכולה להעביר לי סכין? איפה משרתת?
קריה במשרד.
מה את עושה?
כלום.
תהי.
עושה מקום.
צריכה עזרה?
תזרוק, הכל. ארבעה חודשים בלי אמא. זה היה מלפני שנולדת. זה אני אוהבת, 569 יום ואנחנו זוכרים, תראה. הפגנו מול בניין האור עם השלטים האלו בניו יורק. נשארתי אותך עם סבא וסבתא, זוכר? במושב. תראה. נכתב ממזכיר המדינה האמריקאי דאז. Dear, Mrs. Klein.
זוכרת לזרוק את הכל.
אני צריכה את זה. הכל זיכרונות רעים.
זה מפעל החיים שלך.
אתם מפעל החיים שלי. אתה ודנה.
תגידי, סליחה שהוא חזר?
איזה מין שאלה זו חצבי? אתה לא? זה פשוט שינוי לכולנו. אבל זה אבא שלך והוא... אתה תלמד להכיר אותו. אני בטוחה שאתם תהיו החברים הכי טובים. אני כבר מתה שהוא יכיר אותך כמוני.
נו, מצאת אותו?
עוד לא? למה תדאגו, הכל בסדר.
אולי שוב חטפו אותו?
איפה באות לך כל השטויות האלה?
לא, אבל אמא, תארי לך. תארי לך שנסראללה שלך אנשים. יו. בת 17 שנה.
אבל למה את מענה אותה? אני רואה שדוקטור אוסטרובסקי לא מועיל לך בכלל.
דווקא ממש מצוין, אמא. אוטוטו מרפא אותי.
אוטוטו מרפא אותך,
אוטוטו מרפא אותי חזק ומאחורה.
את דוחה.
מה את דוחה? מה אתה מבין בכלל?
מבין.
רגע, מה זה היה? תרים את החולצה שלך רגע. תרים את החולצה רגע.
מה את רוצה?
בואנה, צמחו לך שתי שערות על החזה, הנה.
מצחיק מאוד.
אוי, אח הקטון שלי צמחו שערות על החזה.
יופי, דנה, נו,
הוא גבר,
לא
הוא
מצחיק.
סקסי.
דנה.
סקסי. תראה לי, נו.
די, נו, מצחיק אבל. אמא, תעזרי לי, דנה מנסה לאנוס אותי הסוטה הזאת.
מה עכשיו אתם משתוללים?
אמא, תעזרי לי, צמחו לו שתי שערות על החזה ולא רוצה לעמוד.
תעזרי לי.
די, תעזבי אותו. תעזבי אותו.
מה, גם לך שערות על החזה, אמא?
כמה זמן לא צחקתי ככה. גם אני.
כיף ככה. רק המשפחה. כמו פעם.
So from what starts off as a very happy, sort of joyful scene, and in fact, that's one of the few scenes where Talia is actually happy. You know, for most of season one, she's very depressed and frustrated, and it finishes off with him saying, "Kef kacha rak hamishpacha." It's wonderful here, just the family, and for me that's why I put that scene in when I did that little edit of Nimrod's story, because to me that's such a powerful statement, and it's asking us a very provocative question. What's the provocative question it's asking? Yeah.
Is the mishpacha, Talia and the two kids,
Yeah.
or is the father included as well?
Yeah. So who is the family, and really, is life better with or without the Hatufim home? Now, to me, that's a very subversive question, because one of the sort of pillars of faith of Israeli society is that soldiers have to come home. And here we have a show on prime time TV, very popular, everyone's watching it, And it's challenging that question, and it's saying, maybe it's not better if they come home. Maybe it's not good for the family. And look, I wanted to put this to you. Why do you think he's asking that question? And do you think it's fair of him to ask that question? Remember, this is on TV a few months before Gilad Shalit was released. So everyone's thinking of Gilad Shalit when they're watching this. Is that a fair question, and why is he asking it? Yeah.
I think it's a very honest question, and I think that in Israel today it's completely okay to ask questions which are provocative and disturbing.
Yeah.
And I understand that in the United States they would never ever do such things. A hero is a hero, we don't touch that, this is sacred, and we all have to go back. And in Israel it's okay. You can ask that and life goes on.
I actually sort of disagree. I think sometimes there are things, you know, I had to bring up the analogy of the 3 boys that were kidnapped recently. I was in Israel at the time, and they were your brother and your cousin and your son, and they were your everything. And maybe this is a bit different because it's an issue of passage of time, whereas that was very raw and very immediate. But I think precisely what you said, how provocative that question is, it is full on. Like that is that's really challenging a sacred cow that very few people would have the guts to kind of address. That no one would doubt that it'll be better for the boys to come back and that kind of thing. Maybe this is a bit different because it's a family scenario. But
Look, and I can say as someone that reads a lot of Israeli media, I never saw this question being asked. I saw people saying we shouldn't do large trades for soldiers, but no one's ever said for their family's well-being they should stay bashevi. No one says that. Maybe fiction allows you to ask questions that you would never ask in fact, but it's very provocative. Mark?
Yeah, I think in asking this question, what Giddy Ruff's actually doing is he's capturing that. I shouldn't use this word, capturing. But he's taking back the narrative to an individual family level.
Yeah.
And why we can't ask that question is that there are like you said, there are stand-in for every husband, son, child. Every parent who sends their kid off to tzava needs to know that Israel's going to do whatever it takes to bring them back. And that's, I guess, that's part of the acquiescence that society has towards continuing tzava service. So I think, you know, drawing that question back and saying, well, actually, this isn't really about the communal narrative. This is about an individual family story and what it means in this individual case. It's a powerful.
Yeah, it is, and again, it changes the narrative from what is the dominant discourse.
But it's also a hard question because life will never be what it was before.
So
the whole but even a short passage of time, the whole dynamic of the family changes. The whole worldview of the prisoner has changed. Like the nucleus or whatever, the family is never it's going to be affected always. So I don't think it's as simple as better with or without him, but with him is going to be a different with him than it was previously.
I'm going to just take those comments because I don't want to run out of time, but I want to show you another scene now with Nimrod again, and it has to do with the public reception. So when a soldier comes home, and again we know this with Gilad Shalit, they're very much seen as a hero. But there's another dimension when you come home, and also in Hatufim, what happens in order to release a soldier? Often thousands of Palestinians, Syrians, Egyptian, Hezbollah, whoever there's often a trade. Israel's traded over 10,000 prisoners to release our boys in the past. So given that there's these lopsided deals, you have to imagine that there's a lot of people living in Israel who are directly affected by these releases as much as the family. So this scene focuses on the family of someone whose loved one was released in exchange for a Nimrod, and it's a very powerful scene because he confronts Nimrod and he tries to say, how do I feel about the fact that the person who killed my loved one was released for you? Again, it's very provocative, but look at the question that it's asking us and that it wants us to think about. Nimrod's first interview on television.
17 שנים ישבו בשבי. במשך 17 שנים לא ידענו מה עלה בגורלה. בהתחלה חיכינו, אחר כך צעקנו בכיכר, ובסוף התייאשנו. כולנו, חוץ מאישה אחת. שלום לכם.
שלום.
במשך שנים לא שקטת. הזמן עבר, ולא נתת לנו לשכוח. ועכשיו הוא כאן, איתנו.
אני באמת כל כך מאושרת, אבל לא נלחמתי לבד. כל כך הרבה אנשים, מפוליטיקאים בכירים על אנשים שאני לא מכירה בכלל, אנשים שהקפידו כל שנה לשים מדבקות על המכוניות שלהם, להגיע להפגנות, לעצרות תמיכה. יש לנו עם נפלא.
לא בכל מחיר, 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 לא בכל מחיר.
תסתכל, תסתכל, אתה רואה? רגע, תן לי שנייה, תסתכל על הפנים שלהם. אתה רואה? זאת אשתי, זאת הילדה שלי. המחבל שרצח אותם, חופשי עכשיו בגללך. אנשים שהרגו אותם, שרצחו אותם בדם קר חופשיים עכשיו. אתה מבין? תעזור אותי, אני רק רוצה שתסתכל. אני רק רוצה שתסתכל! אתה רואה? זאת הבת שלי, זאת אשתי. הם אכלו פיצה בירושלים. המחבל שרצח אותם חופשי עכשיו. בשבילך! אתה מבין? בשבילך הוא חופשי!
ואם אלה היו קרובים שלהם בשבי, גם אז הם היו אומרים, עזבו אותם שם, שירגבו, העיקר לא לשחרר רוצחים? מה הם ציפו, שישחררו אתכם סתם כי מבקשים יפה? תמיד יש מחיר. בסוף זה רק קומץ קטן של אנשים, העם תומך. ואם לא היו משחררים אתכם, זה מחזיר לחיים את מי שהם איבדו. ממש לא מצליחה להבין את ההיגיון.
אין היגיון. יש רק כאב.
אבא, זה בשבילך.
בואו כנס. היה מוזר, נורא. השמיים היו שחורים באותו יום. היא התקשרה אליי, אשתי מהפיצה, ואמרה לי, תסתכל על השמיים. כמה דקות לפני הפיגוע. דורית, הבת שלי, אהבה לאכול פיצה, אז הם נסעו למרכז.
אבא, אולי די.
אני רוצה לספר.
זה לא טוב להתעסק בזה ככה כל הזמן.
אל תעצור אותי, אני רוצה לספר. סגרתי את הטלפון ויצאתי למרפסת. מסתכל למעלה, אני לא מאמין. השמיים היו כאילו הולך לרדת גשם מבול באמצע הקיץ. ואיך שאני עומד ככה במרפסת ומסתכל, שמעתי את הפיצוץ. תכף ידעתי. לא יודע איך, אבל תכף ידעתי.
ישבו בכניסה למסעדה. מחבל פוצץ את עצמו בדיוק ליד הכניסה. לא היה להם צ'אנס.
המחבל שתכנן את הפיגוע, סמיר ברגותי, ב-34, חוגג עכשיו את השחרור שלו. רוקד על הקבר של המשפחה שלי. מבלה באיזה חפלה, ואני פה. דורית, 12:30 בסך הכל.
אני מצטער.
תסתכל. תסתכל.
Now This is in Homeland what happens when Michael Brody returns.
Hey Dad, isn't this where we were? Chris, did you see one of my friends?
Yeah.
Sorry, we were hungry.
Totally okay. And there, up here. That's us there, a little round top.
Excuse me. You're that soldier back from Iraq.
One of them.
You the hero. Running for office.
I'm no hero, sir.
Well, whatever you call it, you one tough motherfucker. Man, what you went through kind of puts things in perspective. I'd vote for you.
Thanks, sir.
Pleased to meet you. Waiting to hear what you have to say. I'm sure it's gonna be good. Hey, this is my son, Jimmy.
Jimmy?
Run a construction business locally. To be honest, your family
So you can see there, again, another huge difference between Homeland and Hatufim. When Nimrod is coming home, there's a sense of, you know, look at what I went through. Look at the pain this caused me. When Brody's coming home, people want to shake his hand in the street. I don't know if that's typical of Israeli and American society, but I feel like, again, from the prisoners of war that I've had contact with, that that's not an uncommon story, that people do come up to them and say, do you know what I lost for your freedom? That does happen. And on the other hand, this notion of the American being as the hero is happening there. And the question that, again, is another provocative question that I wanted to ask again is, whose pain is worth more? Is it the bereaved family's pain, or is it the prisoners of war family's pain? How do you balance those two pains? Any thoughts, reflections on that? Yeah?
I guess it was like, I remember who said it.
Yeah.
Talia, I think, said it. She says, it's not going to bring them back. So,
Yeah.
like, the tricky part is, and the question that I have, it's not for the bereaved families, which is terrible. It's if you're letting out these terrorists, what's to say they're not going to do something again, or be the masterminds behind something else that's going to happen again. And also, the next generation know that there is a possibility that even if they do something like this, they can still be released. So it's not so, although it's really sad for and torturous for those families, they're not going to get those people. But that question is, what's going to happen?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
I think that it's the person only symbolizes what stands behind it. When someone comes back, when Gilad comes back, it sends a message to every mother that sends her child that will do everything to bring your child back. But when you release a terrorist, you know that it sends the message to every mother's terrorist, don't worry, we'll swap one of them for 10,000 of ours. So don't worry about sending your child. So that is the problem, that we know that in the currency of Israeli versus terrorist, one of ours is worth 10,000 of them.
I want you to address again the pain of the family who had to have someone who killed someone, one of their loved ones, released. Is that pain worse than not ever seeing your loved one come home if your loved one's a prisoner of war? How do you...
I don't think you can stay. Everyone, you don't trauma is the worst.
Yes. Good. So, and to me, it's an impossible question to answer, and chas v'shalom, I never want to be in that situation, but Nimrod at one point, he says, En higayon yesh ra ke'ev. There's no logic, there's only pain. And to me, that's again such a powerful line here. En higayon yesh ra ke'ev. Because what it's saying is, you know, we all sit and we talk about politics so much and we argue for and against and all of this sort of stuff, and we're doing it this month too. But en higayon, like there's ultimately nothing, everything we're doing, and this is how I felt the past month, it's just sad. It's just sad. We're in a situation, it's very sad, and I don't know what to do about it, and as much as I try and find a logical answer to it, I'm just left with this sadness, and I feel like I can't find anything that expresses that except things like Hatufim, and to me that's why it's so important when you're teaching about Israel to use Israeli film and television, because it can express emotions that you can't get through just a media analysis or these sorts of things. within Israel, the debate about soldiers is a very heated one. This was a few days before Gilad Shalit was released. The Almagor Terror Victims Association actually did a high court petition to prevent Gilad from being released, and they said, we have to release him in another way, and we're going to stop this. And you probably know the Roth family from Melbourne were very involved in this petition as well, very much against the deal. And these voices of the bereaved families get a lot of attention in Israel. They are very significant, and people are very much aware of their pain. On the other hand, you also have people like Robbie Damlin and Ali Abu Awad, an Israeli and a Palestinian, who both have lost loved ones in the conflict, and they have a group called the Parent Circle, the Bereaved Families Forum, and they are very much in favour of having dialogue even with the person who killed you, and they say we don't want to use the revenge, the loss of our loved ones as an excuse for revenge. And she wrote a piece about Gilad Shalit, and David is her son, who was killed by a Palestinian sniper whilst he was manning a checkpoint. And she says, now I think honestly, what would I feel if they would release the man who killed my son David? I'm digging into me to get answers, and I discover that the life of Gilad and the welfare of his family is worth everything. Moreover, I also wonder whether the slight satisfaction and revenge that I should feel if he stays in jail for the rest of his life will fill the gap, the gaping void in my heart always. It won't. There is no consolation in revenge for loved ones who have perished. So again, even when we say all the bereaved families feel the same way, they don't. Even within the bereaved families, you've got a side that's in favour of doing trade and a side that's not. So what we have here is this situation where art and life are imitating each other. And I want to ask, how did we get to this point? And the story starts, look, there's a very, very long history with Israeli prisoner exchanges, but there's probably a very famous story of a guy called Uri Ilan. I don't know if anyone's heard of Uri Ilan before, but Uri Ilan was a soldier who was a POW, and instead of being captured, he killed himself, and he was considered a hero in Israeli society for many years. And this is just a quote from Zahava Solomon, who's written a PhD on prisoners of war. She actually appears in Hatufim as an actress for a few minutes. And she said the following. Alison, can you read this for me?
The disapproval shown towards soldiers who had been tortured, many of them for months or years, was rooted in the traditional Israeli military ethic that an honourable soldier fights to the death, to his last bullet. The soldier was supposed to die rather than be taken prisoner, thereby humiliating the army, the nation, and allowing the possibility that he might give away secrets under torture. The model Israeli POW, Solomon noted, was Uri Ilan, who committed suicide in Syrian captivity in 1955, leaving behind a note that read, Lo bagati, I did not betray.
Okay, so in our ideal, we want every soldier to be Uri Ilan. And I know for those that have followed after Gilad Shalit was released, there was a lot of criticism that when he was kidnapped, he had his weapon with him, that he was, that basically he didn't sufficiently fight back, or that even perhaps he was asleep when he was kidnapped. There's all sorts of theories, but either way, there's been a lot of like, why aren't you Uri Ilan? And over time, this perception has changed. And the main thing that changed this perception, I don't know if you remember, in 1985, there was a deal where Ahmed Jabril he was from the PFLP. There was a release of 3 Israelis for 1,150 Palestinians. And one of those Israelis was Yosef Grof, and there's a photo of him here you can see. And the question, and that was the first really big lopsided exchange. And the question is, how did it come that we do this? Because we've done it several times since. Why do we do this? And when I did my research, the answer I found floored me. And I'm going to share it with you now because it's quite amazing how it came to be this way. Does anyone know why we did this deal?
Because of the mother.
Yeah, because of... Does anyone know who Miriam Groff is? I'm going to show you Miriam Groff. She was an amazing woman. This is her there, this is her now. Just look at her face. And this is what Eitan Haber said about Miriam Groff. Eitan Haber was a senior aide to Yitzhak Rabin. Amazing quote. David, can you read it for me?
It is difficult to explain, but only someone who met that woman could understand how she filled everyone with a deep, blood-boiling, paralyzing sense of shame. We are speaking about 3 very tough men, Rabin Peres and Yitzhak Shamir, the foreign minister, who had no problem saying no. but simply could not stand up to Mrs. Groff. What tipped the scales was not her tears or screaming or her teeth grinding, all of which I remember clearly. It was the whole package. There was something menacing about her that threatened that the world was coming to an end. Her aggressiveness was not of this world. She broke them all down.
It's an amazing story how one woman and her determination to bring home her son created, this culture in Israel of these ridiculously lopsided swaps. Is amazing how, it's such a, again, if you're trying to explain what is Israel to your students, there's a story for you that I doubt many people in this room would have heard before. That's to me such a powerful thing of the role of the Israeli mother in Israeli society. And so this is her very famous photo, finally seeing her son coming home on the 22nd of May, 1985. She also started this notion of having a yellow ribbon in solidarity of soldiers. And Yosef Groff is now, and I've been in contact with him through the group that he runs at Erim Balayla, where they campaigned for POWs still in captivity. He wrote an article in 2008 when there was a whole series of piguim that were going on in Israel. A very difficult quote again. He said, "People would come up to me in the street and blame me for the Intifada. I heard it all the time, and I still do, including from strangers. This country doesn't like live POWs. It prefers that you come home in a coffin." Again, so the fact that that's his experience, to me is heartbreaking. And I was shocked when I heard that because I was expecting that Israel would relate to the POWs like we saw with in Homeland, and the fact that he's still getting this on the street is difficult. On the other hand, I want to honour the pain of the bereaved families who feel that this is what they want to say to him. So again, where is the logic here? There is unfortunately a lot of pain. So I wanted to finish off, we've just got 2 minutes left, with a short clip of what happened when Gilad Shalit came home. And what I've done is I've set this clip to the theme music of Hatufim because I wanted to give you some sort of joy at the end of this very heavy presentation. It will be some sort of joy mixed with sadness, but again, it's some amazing scenes here from the day he came home.
שלא נגמרת.
With that, I just wanted to say that art does indeed imitate life sometimes, and to keep in mind that Israel still does have 5 MIAs, and to keep in mind that their stories, both when they're in captivity and once they come home, are stories that we should tell, and to hopefully find the pain and find the logic and find the love and find all of those emotions that you experienced today in your teaching, and I think your students will appreciate you for that. Thank you very much.